Thanks for hanging out in the garage with me again. My bench is a mess. Okay. I had a bunch of stuff I was working on. You know, it's been one of those days. I want to talk to you a little bit about your practice on a square range, which is why I have the blue gun. And we'll talk about that in a second. But just a brief aside, I have been running like a crazy person. I mean, busy is good. If you're busy, that's a good thing. But there are times you're kind of over busy, and I've been over busy for about 2 weeks, to the point that I was running on empty yesterday. I was teaching a class for the concealed carry course for the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I should probably clarify that. I don't work for the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department authorizes different companies and instructors to teach the course, and I'm one of them. I have been for a really, really long time. I don't know how many years, but it's been a long time. A couple decades, I think. In any case, I was teaching that class yesterday. I had a bunch of students. And when I had them on the range, the name of the company that I own is Practical Defense Systems. So I try to keep everything I teach very practical and down to earth. I recognize I'm not teaching at the police academy, not teaching police officers. I'm not teaching military personnel in boot camp. I'm not training people who are going to necessarily be working alongside of a trained individual in a firefight. In concealed carry courses and any kind of civilian shooting courses, I'm teaching a civilian, an individual, how to shoot in some cases. Maybe that's basic shooting of one type of firearm or another, or maybe it's firearm safety, or in the case of a concealed carry permit, it's how to fight with a gun in the context of a civilian environment, and generally with a concealed carry handgun, if it's a concealed carry course, most certainly. And they're going to be most of the time smaller than this blue gun mock-up. But you get the idea. A lot of these folks do not have the ability to get on an outdoor range and practice shooting and moving, shooting from odd positions, shooting around cover, over cover, under cover, or whatever. They don't have the ability to do that because they're on what we call a square range, where they've rented a lane, and now you're in a lane and you're shooting in a lane. So I said to them, look, first we're going to just fire a few rounds. I want to see if you can shoot, because I can determine in a class whether the student knows how to shoot well in 10 or 15 rounds. I don't need them to shoot 50 rounds or 100 rounds or 1,000 rounds for me to be able to tell that they have good weapons handling skills and that they shoot straight and they can hit what they're shooting at. Beyond that, I have to take them from target shooting to shooting to defend themselves, and unfortunately the range where I teach the course is on an indoor range because it's the range that's available to me, and it's the one where the management is really happy to have me there. Trying to get range time in a state that doesn't like firearms, first of all, makes it very difficult to own and operate a range, secondly, and is going out of their way trying to shut down as many ranges as possible can be very challenging, because you're competing not only with the public who wants to go shoot, but also other instructors, and you're also competing with agencies, whether they're federal, state, or local law enforcement agencies, or in some cases military agencies, military groups that are smaller commands that maybe don't have a range available to them, so they're using that same range that you're on. So this is what you're competing with in a state like California. In Arizona, I can find places to shoot all over the place. California, tougher to do, so I teach at the P2K range because Dennis Roman is a great guy, and I get along famously. We have for a long time. I know all the staff. They're excellent. It's a very good range, but it's an indoor range. So I said to them, look, you know what? You can practice the things you might want to do on an outdoor range to some degree if you use your imagination, and at least you can expand the envelope of your experience so that if you ever have to do these things for real, you'll have done them at least in part. Of course, a couple of students kind of looked at me like I had 10 heads, until I had them do it. And then they didn't look at me that way anymore. So here's an example. I said, everybody gets up here and they shoot this way, and that's fine. Or maybe they shoot, I shoot a modified Weaver typically, but they might shoot a Weaver stance, they might shoot an isosceles stance and drive that gun forward. It doesn't matter what the stance is. We all get in that perfect stance. We put that perfect silhouette that's facing us up in front of us, and we practice at the range. We don't move. We stay right there because we're in a lane. Well, obviously one problem with that is we don't learn to get off the X. When people say get off the X, they're talking about get off the target. You are the target. The X marks the spot. You're the target. Get the heck off the X before you get shot. That's what they're talking about, okay? So when you hear the term get off the X, that's what they're referring to. Get off the stinking target. X marks the target and you're standing on it and you are it. So you might want to move. Get behind cover. I said to them, look, you're standing in a lane. What can you do? I asked them, what can you do to simulate fighting while you're standing in a lane at an indoor range? They all looked at me and went, I said, okay, so for example, you all get the perfect stance. Well, what if you're trying to move to cover? The bad guy is there and your cover is over there. Are you going to kind of sidestep to get to cover, or are you going to move to cover and maybe engage as you go? And they all said we'd move to cover and engage as we go. I said, okay, so you got kind of where you're going in your peripheral vision, but at the same time, you're going to take a couple of whacks at the bad guy to see if you can get the head down, or maybe you can hit him, and you're going to move to the cover that's 3, 4, 5 paces away. All right, that's fine. Don't run. Either shoot or run, but don't run and shoot because you won't hit anything. I said, okay, so fine. Turn your body in that position, engage the target, get down here because you want to get low, and press the trigger a few times and see what that feels like. They all went, wow, that feels great. I said, okay, how many of you practice shooting with your support hand? And no hands went up. I said, okay, turn the other way, do the other thing, and then try to get that dominant eye behind it, or if you need to, if you're right eye dominant, squint your right eye. That'll force the left eye to be dominant, but don't squint it too much. You need to see where you're going. Engage the target again. I had them turn that way and do it. I said, so you don't want to do that. That's fine. You can do this. And if you're right-handed, whatever your dominant side is, you can do this as you move that way. That's fine. Go ahead and try that. So they all tried that. Mind you, none of them did it really well at first. But after they did it for a while, they went, wow, this is great. I never did this before. One guy said to me, this is not a slight against other instructors at all, but he said to me, you know, I'm never going back to the other instructor I did my renewal with 2 years ago. I'm never going back. He announced that very loudly. I said, why? He said, because I didn't learn anything, but I'm learning things here. I said, okay, well, he probably did learn things. He just didn't learn the things he was interested in. So I said, okay, so what if you have to shoot and you have to get small? Well, the table on the range is about maybe, belt high. Fine, get small. Get behind that table. Shrink down. Get down there where you're getting small and shoot over the top of that table, but don't get in a chair. Squat down there. Get small, like you would have to get small behind the hood of a car, an engine block. Or you would have to get small behind a concrete barrier of some sort, a pillar or a big concrete trash can holder in a mall. You want to get small behind that. And this was a great little exercise for them. I said, now get small in a goofy way. Because now you have to kind of get small down here because you got weird cover. That's fine. Shoot from there. Get your eyes behind the sight. See if you can get all those rounds on target. Get small. Here's reality. There are times when defensive shootings look like this or like this. They do. There are times when citizens defend themselves and they have time, they have the ability to get in the perfect stance. There are times when they don't. There are a lot of times when defensive shootings look more like this. Oh, crap! Well, if you've never actually shot from here and hit what you were shooting at, then you're just spraying and praying. I had a guy do it yesterday, and he launched a bunch of rounds off the silhouette, 2 or 3. I said, where did those go? He said, I don't know. I said, that's the problem. Because you're responsible for every round from the moment it leaves the muzzle until it stops and any damage it does along the way. So let's take what you just did and let's make that work. Remember, in case you don't know, I'm a Filipino martial arts practitioner. My instructor, Mike Ritz, is easily the best Filipino martial arts instructor I have ever met. Actually, he's probably the best martial arts instructor I've ever met, with possibly the exception of Shifu Patterson, who was my Kung Fu instructor, because he's amazing, but he's very traditional. Mike comes at it from an FMA perspective where it works or it doesn't work, or whatever you naturally do, you're probably going to do that no matter what I train you to do, so let's make what you naturally do work. That's the way I look at teaching fighting, whether you're fighting with a knife or a gun or a stick or your hands. We have to look at it from the standpoint that unless you're going to spend 20 or 30 years practicing a system until you've practiced it to perfection and we've essentially rewritten the software in your head, you're going to use whatever you're hardwired to do. Let's work from there. I'll give you another example. For example, something big bang goes off. What do people do? The reason why they do that is they're hardwired to do it. Crap, that was loud. Think about what just happened. I got small. My shoulders came up to protect my neck. My hands came up to deflect whatever to protect my head. It's a hardwired response for most people. It's just what we do. Well, would that work fighting? Yeah, well, I can fight from here. Guess what? Boom. Oh, yeah, I can fight from here. I can get the gun out and I can fight from here. So let's take what we naturally do and let's make it functional. If you're on a square range and that's what you're restricted to, I urge you to use your strongest defensive tool, the one that God gave you that is the best defensive tool you will ever have. You don't have to pay a dime for it. It's between your ears. And use your imagination. How can I simulate in this static environment doing the things I might need to do when I'm not in a static environment? This is why I'm an annual member. I do an unlimited thing with P2K every year, and I can go in the member range when there's hardly anybody in there, and then they will allow me, I think partially because I'm an instructor, but they might allow you anyway if you ask them. I can set up a target. I can get 2 lanes. Now, do I have to pay for both lanes? Yeah, that's okay. So now I'm shooting, I'm standing in this lane. I've got this lane over here, or maybe I've got this one over here. It depends on which way I'm going to do it. And the target is actually pushed out on the other lane. And then I take my laser-equipped self-defense pistol, I put it around the other side where I can't see it, and I practice shooting around objects using only the laser as a way to aim, because that simulates shooting, being behind cover and being able to peek around and not really wanting to poke my noggin up so it gets shot off, but getting my hand up there, getting the laser on target and pressing the trigger. I practice that a lot. And I practice these other things I'm talking about a lot. Why? Because it's a very good chance I'm going to end up shooting that way if I have to get small or have to get out of the way. I have to get off the X. I shoot a lot one-handed for that reason. Because I shoot very well two-handed. I don't need as much practice doing that. But I do need to shoot one-handed, and I need to shoot left-handed because I'm right-handed. So this is the stuff you should practice. I had, none of the students that were there yesterday had ever shot one-handed with their support hand, but they did it yesterday. I said, well, by the time class is over, you're not going to be able to say that anymore. And I said to them, you're probably all going to shoot better with your support hand than one-handed than you do with your strong side hand. And they laughed at me like I was an idiot. Yeah, they didn't understand that when you do that, it's very uncomfortable, so your focus is really drilled down and you're really focusing on what you're doing. Well, of course you're going to shoot well. And they all did. They had groups like this with their strong side hand, and they had little groups like this with their weak side hand because they don't do it, and so they were hyper-focused on it. And 2 of the students looked at me and went, how did you know this? How did you know that was going to happen? I said, I've done this before. I've taught about 8,000 or 9,000 people how to shoot at this point. I've been doing it for decades, okay? So, but this is stuff that you want to practice too. And in another video, I'll probably post it. I may post it tomorrow. I'll show you some examples of some targets you can buy. And if you want to go to the website and look ahead of time, I don't make any money from them. I just buy targets from them. It's called Action Targets. And if I think of it, I'll post a link in the description for you. Check them out, because then you get some targets that are more realistic, where you have to shoot, maybe there's somebody shooting at you and there's only this much of them poking around cover. Well, that's more realistic than the standard silhouette. Or maybe it's somebody shooting from a weird position. Now you have to know where should your rounds go, because they're not in the standard silhouette position anymore. And you're likely not to face somebody who's in the standard silhouette position. People don't just stand in front of you and say, hey, shoot me, let me pose. It doesn't work that way. So our training should be realistic as much as we can make it so in a static environment if we're limited to a square range. And even if we're not limited to a square range, if we learn these things whenever we're on a square range, we can practice these things, but you just have to do them safely. And if you have any question whether the range you're at will allow you to do things, you can always ask them. Hey, this is what I want to do. I want to turn sideways and shoot. Okay, the barriers are here, the table is here, your gun is still where it would be if you were this way. that's fine. Get it out there, okay? Now, they may not want you to, put your arm around the other side or something. You may have to find a range that'll let you do that. But as long as the gun is within the two panels on either side separating the lanes, and you have good muzzle discipline, they're probably going to let you do it. They may come ask you, what are you doing? You say, well, I'm just trying to practice more realistically because I have a concealed carry permit and I want to make sure I'm practicing realistically. You'll find when you first start doing this, two things. One, it's maybe three things. One, it's very uncomfortable and odd and it feels weird. Two, you suck at it, okay, which is why you should practice. And three, it makes your shooting a lot more fun and a lot more interesting. And so you'll make your range time a lot more fun. And you'll learn a lot. And then if you ever have to fight with it, you'll have opened up and expanded the envelope of your experience. So if you have to shoot from a goofy position or behind something or whatever, you'll have already done something very similar and it won't be new to you. That could be the difference between winning or losing, between walking away or being carried away. I'd prefer that you get to walk away. Have a great week. Thank you very much for all of your support, and stay safe.